there is some expectation that we will see the first deportation flights to Rwanda taking off as soon as this September if the government wins an appeal, bearing in mind that the first Rwanda flight was due to have taken off this month last year. Do we think this will ever actually happen? Lord Robathan is a former Conservative government minister and joins us right now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, this was something that, you certainly spoke out on a number of times. Do you think these Rwanda flights will ever take off? And do you think that it could be as soon as September?
I very much hope they do. The only way they will not take off is if the government is thwarted by judges or particularly by lawyers who will use every last effort to stop us. And I think what we need to look at, Julia, is do we think this is the right thing to do? Now, it's not perfect, but we all know that we have a huge number of people coming to this country illegally, and we must be able to do something about it. And yet we have not been able to do something about it because we've been thwarted every step by the opposition and by lawyers. And I'm afraid, of course, we want to obey the law, which is what we're doing at the moment. We're trying to change the law so there is no doubt. Currently, we should be able to get rid of them under, I think, Section 24 of the Immigration Act 1971. But people say, oh, no. I mean, I can see on your pictures, people say, no, we can't possibly do that. Yeah. Well, I think you should ask the people of this country whether or not we think we should be allowing 50-odd thousand people this year to come here illegally.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It is extraordinary that the will of the British people has been thwarted, and the will of the Commons as well as representing the British people, and a few human rights lawyers. Things. We have to have a court process, but there is an argument. The courts are supposed to enforce the law that is agreed by our democratically elected representatives. And we've already seen earlier this week that Rishi Sunak has made it clear in an interview that he would be willing to use the Parliaments Act to override the House of Lords if they try and stop the legislation and the illegal migration bill from going through. I just think many people just feel like the reaction whenever we do this on air, we ask a question about this issue on air, and people say, yeah, good, well done, good for trying, give brownie points for that. But the general response is, I'll believe it when I see it. People no longer believe that any government is going to deal with this issue.
Well, that's entirely a fair comment, actually. Look, the House of Lords, of which I am a member, is entirely unaccountable. Let's remember that. So they don't have constituents telling them what they think. Well, I used to have constituents tell them what they think. I think I still have some idea what they may think. Yeah. Last night we sat, this morning we sat until well gone 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to push this through as the opposition filibustered and talked. Yeah. And, I'm sorry, the people of this country expect us to act, and we are trying very hard to act, but we are being thwarted by the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrat Party, and human rights lawyers.
Well, indeed. And it's amazing, actually, the things that people are getting upset about. So the barges being, housing, again, it's a drop in the ocean, 500 here, 500 there. But again, the people who are most keen on having sort of pretty much an open borders policy and thinking that you and I are horrible, xenophobic, racist little Englanders because we don't think that we should have pretty much open borders and unlimited access to this country. They don't all speak out as soon as there's a possibility of people being housed in their part of the world. We've seen Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, objecting to one of these barges being moored, in London, in the Thames. Well, this is a policy you seem to support. Why don't you want to have the people here?
Well, these people, particularly, the greatest interesting fact on this is that the Green Party is entirely opposed to any new building, anything like that. And yet if we have huge numbers of people come to this country, of course we have to house them. There's a huge stress on, it's not just illegal immigration, of course, on this, but there's huge stress on the services, there's huge stress on the infrastructure. If you try using the NHS, try getting an appointment, because there's huge numbers of people, the schools are full. We must be able to control our borders and control the people that come here. And that isn't an unreasonable or indeed xenophobic view. We must have control. And unfortunately, we are still being thwarted. As I said, we sat in the House of Lords until well gone 3 o'clock this morning, trying to push this legislation through, and we are progressing it.
Well, I certainly hope you will be able to push it through. There's predictions, the latest report by Migration Watch UK, that Britain's population will soar above 80 million by 2046. So that's the next 23 years. We're going to add between 16 million and 20 million people to the population. That is the equivalent of building 15 cities the size of Birmingham to provide enough housing. We don't even provide enough housing for people who need it, who are already here. And that is the thing that people are frustrated by. In terms of the accommodation offered to Channel migrants here is fascinating. Again, the outcry about these boats, these barges, but also there's also talk about these cruise ships. And the Home Office is expected to house 1,000 arrivals aboard 2 vessels likely to be moored in Merseyside and Teesside. And we've seen some images inside. Really quite pleasant experience. They've got a cinema, they've got an entertainment stage, they've got luxury cabins. It really doesn't look too bad at all.
Well, the idea that migrants should be camping out in the streets of Pimlico saying that this hotel, I'm expected to share a room, how could you possibly expect me to share a room? If these are people that are fleeing persecution, and there are some people who are genuinely refugees from persecution, that's one thing. But most of these people are coming here very understandably to better themselves. And we know that. I mean, 10,000 Albanians or whatever. They are jolly lucky to be given any accommodation. And there was complaints about former army camps. Now, I've slept in the places they're complaining about. They're perfectly fine.
Well, they were good enough for our soldiers.
Exactly. They're good enough for our soldiers, good enough for people that are coming here illegally.
Yeah, indeed. Just one final set of pictures I want to show you. I mean, I have to say, I found these very distressing, these pictures of a man who's been jailed for his role in a people smuggling operation that saw dozens of Afghan migrants trafficked through Europe to the UK in these sort of wooden structures. I mean, to all intents and purposes, looking like sort of upright coffins. I mean, really, really horrific that what people will go through to get here. Why would people put themselves through that? I mean, people can get to Turkey, to mainland Europe, and then people are paying thousands, risking their lives, getting on rickety boats or going, in lorries and in this sort of in this coffin-like structures. Why are people willing to do that? Because what we're told is, look, these people are desperate and that's why they're coming here. They wouldn't do it otherwise. But, I mean, you're in France, you're not desperate. I'm sorry. Why would they do that?
Well, Julia, I agree with you entirely. I mean, if you come through France, apparently, since millions of us go there on holiday every year, it's a perfectly safe country. But they come here because it's a lovely country. Contrary to what the opposition will tell you, this is a great place to be. We have the rule of law. And that's why people want to come here. And we have also a very generous benefits system. We're very generous to migrants in terms of accommodation. If you said, well, I'm afraid we must stop it. Otherwise, we'll not be able to be generous to anybody because we'll have run into the ground, basically, with, as you say, rightly say, 20 million extra houses, whatever it may be they want. And just remember, and people come here, this is coming to a green space near you. Well, those people in leafy suburbs who say, oh, well, we don't mind, we think migrants should be allowed in, they should just understand the number of new houses that will have to be built, there's pressure on doctors, surgeons, the pressure on schools, the pressure on roads, the pressure on everything else.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Lord Robathan. Thank you for that. 7:31 is the time. This is Talk Breakfast.